Hello good people of the internet, this is the NUX Amp Academy. I've owned it since summer of 2023, I've used it at rehearsals, I've played with it live. And I've recently updated to the V4 update. The Amp Academy is NUX's answer, or more like hopping on the bandwagon of the amp in a Stomp box model, made famous by Strymon Iridium and then the very popular UAFX, Dream and Ruby, which were supposedly extremely good. Now, the NUX Amp Academy is half the price of any of those very good units, but is this one good? Well, let me just start by saying it's not really an amp in a pedal type of thing, it's more like a multi-effects unit masquerading around as an amp in a pedal. You'll see what I mean more and more as we go into this, but it basically feels like an MG30 chip was taken out, put into this thing, and you have some functions tied to these buttons and the rest of the functions are hidden behind a software that you need to connect it to. So let's check it out. Okay, you may or may not have heard that with the V4 update of 2024, we finally got the Peavey 5150 model. And let's get this straight out of the way. It sounds like dog shit. What? And this is with the stock IR, stock settings, stock everything. Let me just try to lower that bass by quite a bit. Maybe lower the bias, give it some much needed treble. So let me load in my impulse here. It's kinda usable, but that gain just sounds so plasticky, so digital. Just gonna boost it a little bit. Okay. You know what? It would have been better if they did not include this at all. It is extremely boomy. Let me just try to add some low cut to the impulse. It is bad. I mean, you can play around with it, but that does not sound like a 5150 to me. Anyway, thankfully the default high gain model on this thing is the Bogner Uberschall model. I don't think it sounds exactly like a Uberschall, but it has something in there. So of course I'm using my impulse again, because these stock impulses are pretty bad. This one is lost. I lost one during the update, so I have no idea what's supposed to be on number 13. Bogner. This should be the default impulse for the Uberschall. Yeah, very honky, very MIDI. Most of them are not great. Back to mine then. When you compare them and contrast them like this, mine sounds a bit weak on the bottom end, but you just can't have it all with this unit. So after a lot of tinkering, after loading your own IRs, it can sound pretty okay. You will notice that I have the gain set really low at 15 because this unit just has a ton of gain on anything that has drive or distortion on it. So let me just show you what happens to when I go to 25 or something. Still usable. Not bad, actually. Right, it's a very aggressive, very bitey distortion. I just like to keep things a bit cleaner, which is why I have it set to 50. But overall, with this thing, you do want to load your own impulses. The stock ones sound crap. And by the way, this is where you can spot one of the first bugs. If your impulse name is too long, it gets deleted from the app. I mean the name. You can actually load the actual impulse. Or this one. Right, but you have no idea what it was. So just make sure you rename them to something short as you load them in, so you wouldn't lose it. Because when I first got this, I had all of these custom slots filled with impulses, and I picked my favorite. And when I restarted the app, I had no idea what I had picked. So it was a bit of a nightmare trying to tweak my tone further. You may be wondering why I am lowering it to -6 dB every time I load in a new impulse. That's because the outputs of this thing are very hot. It will basically distort most interfaces or mixing consoles I plug it into. So you will notice I have my DI set to -30, and every impulse I load, I just go -6 dB. And about the gain thing, I can actually prove it. So even the Tube Screamer model, which I use to boost all of my high gain stuff, it doesn't really sound like a Tube Screamer. So let's show you something. I'm just gonna go to a clean channel. And then have a Tube Screamer in there. Let me grab a real Tube Screamer. See, my point is, I was able to make the real Tube Screamer sound as harsh as the one in the Amp Academy, but the one in the Amp Academy does not have the ability to sound, soft, mellow, and it also has a low-end thump, while the actual Tube Screamer, and that's why we use it, kind of cuts out the low end. In any case, don't worry, I do use the Tube Screamer model to boost my high gain amps. Requires some more tweaking, but it works. Just don't buy this unit and think that this is how a Tube Screamer sounds. Speaking of real, let's go into the actual amp EQs and see how it responds. The treble control controls some, I like to call them very high mids. I mean, it's not real sizzling treble that you can get out of it. It just goes ha ha ha. Okay, what about the presence control? So if you dial it below 40, you start losing high end. If you dial it above 60 or something, you start getting mid-range. So the presence control is very weird. To be fair to the Amp Academy, it's possible that the real Bogner responds like this because Bogner's controls are pretty whack, but that's weird. Of course, you wouldn't want to use that, that's a dead guitar. So I have it at 45, that seems to be the sweet spot. But we kind of skipped the mids, so let's see what this does. You can get some sick scooped ass tones with this, though I'm afraid of being lost in the mix, which is I usually have some mids in there. Yeah, the mids do what mids should do. It's a nice control over the boxy mids around 650, 800 Hertz, maybe 900. Around the 800 spot. Anyway, I have these at 50. Pretty cool. Bass. That's a pretty usable bass. It doesn't have a lot of sub in it. You're not going to be stepping on the bass guitarist's frequencies. I don't know why I have it this low at 35. kind of opens up the mid-range for my guitar to push through. I guess that's why I have it set like this. I do use this with my band, so... But if I go up to like 55, I don't think it's gonna be bad. That is chugging. And that's the opposite of chugging. It's a good sound, it cuts through. Lots of attack, but you know what, I'm just gonna save this at 55. That's pretty good. Save. And then you have the bias control, which I don't know how to explain. It's supposed to simulate rebiasing the power section of your amp. So this kind of sounds like sagging a little bit, but it also becomes unpleasant with some distortion in the high mid-range. And when you go down, you kind of scoop it. Again, you should set this to taste, playing with the EQ. I found that 45 is around, you know, what I want it at. Maybe 55, let's see. Nah, it becomes a bit boxy, a bit digital. So 45. That is pretty good. So as you know, each amp category has a few different amps to pick from. When this unit launched, you had 2 in each category, but now we have 3. So the Iridium category is the super high gain one, and you have a choice between the Uberschall, the Diezel VH4 and the 5150, which it's not really an option. So you might be wondering, is the Diezel VH4 a good sound? And I'm gonna say yes, it is. It sounds a bit more fried. The gain structure is very similar to the Uberschall model. Maybe less a gain stage or something. It definitely has a more classic sound to it. You can get this to sound good as well. Let me try to just... Again, the treble control does not control treble. The presence control reacts the same. The middle. The middle control sounds like it's controlling a different type of mids. Sounds kind of unpleasant. These are not the boxy mids of the Uberschall. And the bass doesn't seem to do as much. Let's see the bias. Yeah, I would not touch the bias of the VH4 model, but it's a good model. I like it. I just like the Uberschall sounds a bit more modern. has a very pleasant thump in the lower mids to the lows. You can definitely get away with using the VH4 if you like some more early 2000s or 90s metal tones. Overall, does it sound non-digital? I don't think so. Like, to my non-experienced ears, it sounded pretty good until I started actually comparing it to my 5150. What is it missing? It's missing a very nice high-end sparkle and richness and an open bottom end. Okay, I kind of messed up while recording this part, but basically I'm comparing the sound of my 5150 50 watt into an impulse and then the NUX Amp Academy into the same impulse. It's a Selection T75 and the microphone is MD421 Sennheiser. You notice how the 5150, which is the top track, is much more bright. It's sparkly, but all of those highs still have musical information, and it's more open on the bottom end, while the NUX is much honkier and doesn't seem to have that high-end information. So next, I played around and I found impulses that work better with the NUX. Now, not as good, but at least they gave me some sparkle in the highs and opened up the bottom a bit more. So here's that comparison. A bit better, right? Yeah. Just to speak on that treble side, okay? So you noticed that the amp controls themselves don't really give you treble, and maybe you're screaming at your monitor. You have an EQ block, use that! Here's the EQ block. Now, first of all, you'll notice that you only have controls over to the 6.4K, which is barely enough. And secondly, it does not sound amazing. It sounds like it's trying to amplify details that are not there. So it's very digital, compressed, like it's generating my music. Without, with. That's not a pleasant frequency. Point being, don't use the EQ in this thing. I don't like the EQ block at all. Get your sound from a nice custom IR that you picked out yourself and the EQ of the amp model. Now, let's move on to the clean features, and I do believe that this unit has great clean sounds. Like, check this out. Too bad I don't know any clean music. almost any of the clean or the slightly overdriven amps sound pretty good. Now, they have some problems with compression being a bit too aggressive. Right. They sound beautiful, and this is good for you because this little thing works as a great pedal platform. At least that is my theory. I've always thought that it would. I never used it. So here, live with you, we're going to test my theory. This is a Bogner Ecstasy distortion pedal. It is notorious for sounding like absolute garbage when you connect it to a power amp only or an FX return. It is designed to be plugged into the front end of an amp. So if you want to go ampless, you need a pedal platform amp to run effects like this one, and there are other ones that kind of do the same. Let's test this. I'm going to plug this in, boost it with a Tumnus because I love the sound that both of them get, and we're gonna see if it actually sounds good. We do not need reverb for this. We do not need the EQ for this. Tell you what, I do not hate this. It's gonna require some tweaking. Let's try to do it with my thingy again. Sounds a bit honky. Honker. Okay, not terrible. The twin reverb though is not the pedal platform, I don't think. Let's try the super reverb. This one is also not it, I don't think. Okay, with the bright switch engaged. It's nothing unusable, right? Not for super metal, but then again, this pedal is not really for super metal. I just like to push it. Anyway, I think the deluxe reverb, which was actually released with the V4 update, might be the one. You know what? I do not hate this. It's kind of low in volume. Give me a second. I'm getting somewhere. Point being, it's a pretty good pedal platform. Maybe if you have something more high gain, more modern than the Bogner thing, it's gonna work better for you. But with some tweaking, I can get some pretty nice, very organic sounding distortion from this. Again, it has a more classic sound to it, so... There you go, the V4 update was actually not useless. The only bad thing in it is the 5150 model, but I like this, what is it? Deluxe Reverb, to use it as a pedal platform. Which brings me to another amp from the update. Now, I'm a poo-poo doodle metalhead, and I'm not like the Vox AC30 aficionado of YouTube, but... this kind of sounds like what I imagine an AC30 sounds like. Again, this is new with the update, and I really like it. So if I split up my IR on it, -7, there we go. Has that sparkle, black, black, black. It has a ton of compression though. And that's something you're gonna notice with this unit. So the high gain models have a ton of unnecessary drive maybe, and then the clean amps have a bit too much compression, which you may or may not pick up with your ears. But that said, this is very usable. I would make a clean channel around the AC30 model. Maybe a bit hot. I just wanted to mention this. I really like the AC30 model in this, and I haven't even played around with it. I haven't tweaked it or anything yet. And there's the Princeton, which is also new for this update. Okay. Kinda dead, bit too much bass. Doesn't have a mid control, which is bad for this. Ah, there we go. I think this one might also work as a pedal platform, but when you don't have a mid control, you can't dial out stuff that's not supposed to be there, so I wouldn't touch this one. They're just far better clean models in this thing. And anything that is slightly overdriven, like my favorite, the Dr. Z here, or the Cali Crunch, which is a messy boogie. It sounds okay, it's like a slight drive. Again, a lot of compression. I do not have this on, right? It's off. But you can kind of hear it compress. I assume because they want you to hear the chiminess of the highs and they go... they squish the low end first and then they let it go. But that's fine, you can use this live and nobody in the audience is gonna say, that guy has a lot of compression. Nobody knows what compression is. And here's the Cali Crunch. Unfortunately, I have no idea what to play with Crunch. Was that it? Never mind. Just wanted to quickly share the Crunch models with you, they are usable. Okay, so how are you supposed to use this unit? As I touched upon earlier, it's not exactly a what you see, what you get type of amp in a box. It's a multi-effects unit, and NUX is kind of hiding this, but you do need to open it up with an app to kind of get the most out of it and actually dial in a tone that's not shit. The most useful features are locked behind the app. Good news, you can use a mobile app with it, but there's no Bluetooth, so you still need to use a USB-C cable. But basically you're supposed to actually sit down and tune it up to taste, just like I'm doing right now in one session. Pick your favorite cab, play around with the models, find your favorite ones, make different scenes, a scene with a lead boost, a scene that activates the effects loop. Here's what I mean. If I want to set up my Tube Screamer boost without using the app, the knob on the Amp Academy only controls the level. I cannot control the tone, I cannot control the drive. So that's ridiculous. Anyone who sets up a boost wants to set up the tone, right? Make your presets as best as possible to your ears. Take it to rehearsal, take it to sound check. See if you've done everything right. If worse comes to worse, you can use the actual physical buttons, but the unit itself doesn't give you any indication of where your settings were. So, for example, if I go on a stage where my treble is way too hot in their specific setup, I can dial down the treble on the unit, but I have no idea where it was before that, and I have to go through my rhythm channel, lead channel, alternate channel with effects loop, then I have to go down to my clean channel, the clean channel with the lead settings, whatever, dial all of those trebles back, and then come back home, load this into my PC and see what I've actually done. So bottom line, treat it as an effects unit that's kind of limited with its controls, not an actual amp and a pedal. Oh, and also its outputs are extremely hot. Just please dial the DI output as low as possible. It's ridiculous how high this gets. And when loading up impulses, or even with the stock impulses, don't use the stock ones. Just have them at -6, -7, something like that. Last tip, when changing scenes or changing channels, be very careful to not step on both buttons at once. They're very closely spaced together. The problem is that stepping on both at once immediately puts the unit in bypass, which was a terrible decision by NUX. Basically, your signal goes dry into the PA, and you will be shocked at how easy it is to do this. Like, especially if you're backup vocals or anything, you're looking at your mic, you want to switch to a solo, and then you just step in the general direction of the Amp Academy, you step on both buttons, your solo is out, you're out of there, you're done. Yeah, sure, you can step again to activate it and then choose your scene, but by this time your big entry into your leads is gone. So if I had my wish list for this unit, top priorities would be allow me to control the DI outputs, give me some way of master volume on this thing. Maybe if I hold down a button and just rotate one of the knobs, just let me control the DI master out. And my second wish, make it so I need to hold down both buttons for like a couple of seconds for it to go into bypass. It's an amp in a box, it's supposed to be the last thing in my chain. I think that anyone using this would never think about bypassing it while playing. My 2 cents. Okay, it's not perfect. You can get pretty good high gain tones out of it with a lot of tweaking. You can get some very, very good clean sounds with it with not a lot of tweaking. Price wise, I think the Hotone Ampero Mini is just a little bit more expensive, and I do believe it has better sounds, but it does not give you the same I/O. You have a direct out with a mono cable, you have an XLR out to go straight into PA. You can use both at the same time, so you can go into PA with your impulses, and you can go into your amp without impulses. You have an effects loop here. You know, a lot of versatility comes from the hardware that it provides. And then Line 6 came out with the Pod Express, which is also not too much more expensive than this. I need to take a look at the prices, but it's kind of limiting. It has like its preset amp models, and they're tied up to IRs, and you can't load in your own IRs. I'm sorry, I'm losing light. I do not have studio lighting. What are you gonna do? There, studio light. So the Line 6 Pod Express, I think, is a worse deal. You can't load in your own IRs, and you have no say about which amp is tied to which IR, and it doesn't allow for so much scene switching, doesn't have an effects loop, so it's not as versatile and usable as the Amp Academy. Downsides of the NUX Amp Academy. You do need to hook it up to your computer or at least your mobile device every once in a while to get deep in there and tweak your settings further, because you're not gonna get them right in the first try, and you will also find ways to augment your sound. The software is a little buggy. As you noticed, I lost the names of my impulses, which I like to use. Sometimes it resets the -6 dB level, goes up to 0, but it does not show me that. So I'm like, why is this suddenly so loud? But minor bugs, okay, just annoying ones. Its sound fidelity is not pristine. You're not going to be cork sniffing your tone with this unit. It's usable though. Its stock impulses are absolute crap. Now, I'm not bagging on chop tones. As far as I know, they make some very nice impulses. I think that the parameters of this partnership deal that NUX and chop tones had were a bit different. Maybe they were aiming to make some more safe impulses that would sound non-aggressive and good on Bluetooth speakers or hi-fi headsets or whatever users would be plugging them into, because you know it's kind of a cheap unit, and I guess that one would speculate that it would be bought by people that don't have the more expensive musical gear to plug it into or the developed taste. I don't want to sound like a cork sniffer. The upsides: it is very fun to play and it can sound quite good after some tweaking. It is incredibly portable, not only because it's small, but it takes 9 volts, 500 milliamps. I am actually powering this thing as I'm recording this video with just a battery, and even when I go live, I power it with this battery. And it has tons of inputs and outputs for any situation. At the end of the day, I can keep this as a spare in my gig bag and even use it as nothing but an impulse loader with going straight into its effects return. I bought it at full price. If I try to sell it on Reverb now for second hand, I don't think the money I can get out of it equates the value it's actually giving me. So it's a pretty nice unit. Do with that information what you will.